my
Okay, yeah, I guess it went live on the other page, so I'm still learning. Welcome, everybody. A Hash Church 5.0, episode 2. Just going through the logistics of trying to get it all to work here. We're live in the other room, so people are starting to come over now. Oh, we got Wade waiting to get in there. We got Wade and Skunkman Sam in the room right now. That's awesome. A couple of elders. All right, I think that is all. There we go. Beautiful. Welcome, Wade. Welcome, Skunk Man. Here's to another episode of Hash Church.
Howdy, Wade. Missed you last week.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah, Sam missed us last week. He was ready, but he wasn't ready. He just, sometimes it happens like that with Hash Church. Oh, started 81 seconds ago. We already got 53 people in the room.
Howdy,
Very
Wade.
cool, very cool. What's that, Sam?
No, that was me playing what you said on TV.
I see. Well,
I like to watch
it
it on TV because it's bigger.
Oh yeah, of course, for sure. I got a nice, pretty big screen. There's Wade. Got the coveralls on. I like it. That is what's up. Hopefully, we're having a good Sunday today here. It was pretty stormy here last night. It was a beautiful day, probably like 85 degrees Fahrenheit all day, sunny, no clouds. And then last night, it was like just wind and not so much rain, but there is a lot of cleanup to do on the property for sure. Big time. How about you guys? Pretty uneventful evening, Saturday night?
Yes.
Not too much happening.
I was pretty chill myself. I hung out with my little guy, Tanner. He's going to be turning 10 years old in a few days. And I'm taking him to his first concert in 2 days to Michael Franti and Spearhead. I love Michael Franti because he does all ages shows. So he's pretty excited about it. I'm not going to lie. Oh, hey, Rackham. We will have, well, Dr. Mark just came in. We got Skunkman Sam. We got Wade. I invited Colin from Vessel Life Sciences. He was just visiting his father in the hospital, so he'll be here a little bit late. Thomas from Grandmaster LED will be in about 10 minutes late as well. And then, I didn't hear from Dr. Mark Lewis or Alec Dixon from SC Labs or Nick Ziegler. But I also put the invitation out to those guys. I invited Mojave again, if he was able to make it. So just kind of loose, whoever's able to make it. We'll have our little conversation and spend a couple hours together for Hash Church. Welcome, Dr. Mark.
Marcus, how are you? Hey, Sam. Missed you last week.
I'm doing fine.
Yeah, you look the same.
Yeah, he's still got his COVID mask there.
All of us other people our yellow hairs are turning white, gray. Hey, Wade, how are you?
I'm good, Mark. Nice to see you. Really nice to be here. I spent yesterday. Monica and I made a big expedition and went down to the Bay Area for the Emerald Cup. They're still doing that, and boy, the California market, the business side of it has pretty bare bones at this point. It was lovely to see a bunch of people that I knew. A bunch of people stopped by. But yeah, lots and lots of people are realizing that the California market as it's currently structured is a disaster and are dropping out of it. And it's kind of a shame to see some of the legacy operators that I know who are extraordinary cultivators and deeply compassionate medicine makers that really just there's no way in the business world to make it in California right now, is how it looks to me, unless you're willing to stretch the rules or ignore them. that's a whole different conversation. Anyway, it was a really lovely day for me. Took a lot out of me. I'm pretty exhausted today, but I'm really looking forward to our conversation and some of the brilliant people who show up here. Marcus, thank you again. Yeah.
Well, shout out to Tim Blake for 20 plus years now of the Emerald Cup. I was thinking about that the other day. He must have started that just right around when we started Legends of Hash, Sam, because it's been 20 to 21 years of Legends of Hash as well. So kind of neat that those two
I
events
think the
started
first
in
year
a
for
very...
Legends of Hash was 2003. Is that correct? When we had the balloons?
I don't know if it was, I don't know if the balloon was the first year. It's so hard to remember shit as you get older, but I do definitely remember the balloon year. I wasn't there the balloon year, so I think that was a couple years later, but I think you're right in the sense that the first one we did was either in 02 or 03, which would put us around 21, 22 years of doing them.
I saved an extra balloon if you need one.
Nice. Yeah, I never got a balloon. That was a neat kind of way to get a ticket, to just someone's like, let's just put the ticket on the balloon. If you have the balloon, you can come in. And if you don't have the balloon, well, I'm sure we'd probably still let you in. But yeah, crazy times. Yeah. See what's going on here. Just checking out the chat room. We got 132 people watching. We had up to about 220 live last week, usually around 10 o'clock when people are getting up. But we got John Maddox, who's always in the chat room, big, huge supporter. Rackham's Rosin is in the chat room right now. We got Keep It Simple 420. For those of you that were wondering about the German numbers that we were discussing last week, Keep It Simple actually put it in the comment section in regards to how many members you can have, how much you can grow, the sort of breakdown for that German model that they're doing, similar to Spain, I guess. So that was nice of him to put in there. We got Cody Packer, OG Brick 420, Al Telescope Uranus. Jeez, I don't know about that, but TK Brewer's in the house, and yeah, just a ton of cool people. It's growing as we speak, and yeah, we'll have a few more people joining us here in a little bit. In the meantime, I think it might be time for a little rip out of the Carta. Loving this little guy. Unfortunately, my Puffco's, oh no, actually, I wonder if it started working. I think it did. I was trying to hit my Puffco the other day, and it was doing the red light thing where it wasn't heating up, and always nerve-wracking when your little electric devices stop working. But oh, there we go. Oh wow, you got the bass and everything, Sam. Let's do it. Let's have a little rip. Get the dialogue going. No fish for you, Dr. Mark? Or don't they have some huge fucking festival going on right now? I've been seeing little clips on my Twitter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They are having a festival down in the hole right now.
Crazy. I saw the secret set, and it looked like it was at the Sphere or something. Like, they really stepped it up with those visuals. I can't but help the work they did at the Sphere must have helped inspire that. You think?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it looked really crazy. It's up on YouTube, so you could see it.
Yeah, I saw some clips. Yeah, pretty amazing. Pretty amazing for sure. I know I saw the interview with Trey when he was talking about the Sphere shows that they were going to do and how serious they were taking it, and how they were like, no one is ever going to see anything like this. Everything was unique. And Dead & Co had a pretty incredible show. It's the same graphics every night. Fish went out on a limb, and we're like, we're going to just do new graphics every minute of every night, which is sounds about right, Fish.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible stuff to behold. Even all the Dead Company stuff, the imagery. They show like neighborhoods in San Francisco and venues where they played. And
Dude, the neighborhood in San Francisco with the drone where it all lifts up and they go up, that was Absolutely incredible. I, of course, did not make it to the Sphere for any of the shows, but I've had many friends go. My friend Allison has been to, I don't even know how many of the shows. So she sends me
Yeah.
little videos and stuff where I get to live vicariously through her.
I'm sure you saw that guy who posted his bong hit that he took on Instagram, right? And then the the people who run the Sphere are the same people who run Madison Square Garden, right? It's the Dolan family, and they use facial recognition software, as it turns out. So when you go to Madison Square Garden, or you go to any of their venues, they'll actually use facial recognition to say, "Hey, was this guy ever a problem at a previous event? Because if so, they'll pull you out of line." But yeah, so he originally, I think he got banned from those venues, but then there was such a public outlash of support for him. So the bong rip dude,
Yeah, you got
and
to
then
think a lot of bad shit happens at
yeah,
concerts. There's some aggressive people and this, that, and the other thing. But taking a bong rip at a concert would be, especially one like Fish at the Sphere, where like bong rips have been involved in the creation of the music, the visuals, probably the building of the
oh, for
Sphere.
sure, yeah.
Um, I think bong rips were present all the way through, and so what a silly thing to kind of,
No, but they have a
you know what, the
pretty.
whole.
I was just going to say they have a pretty strict policy just on no smoking in general. I think that's to try to keep tobacco and all that kind of stuff out. But people are still hitting vape pens. But I guess the point of having actually fire and combustion inside an event where you have some big glass bong, it's kind of like, okay, you snuck the bong in, you're smoking, you're recording it, you're putting it up to the internet. I mean, how are you not going to get in trouble?
I still support it. Civil disobedience, man. Just like Wade was saying earlier with the disaster that is the California legal cannabis scene, unless you're willing to stretch or break the rules, which is like, wow, isn't that how we got the rules in the first place? I mean, I know it is here in Canada for sure. We just like civil
Yeah.
disobedience all day long, took them to court, won, gained this whole scene. And now all the people that are involved in it, because they have like licenses that they're trying to protect, are terrified to step out of line and practice any more civil disobedience. So it's kind of a weird little corner we've painted ourselves into with this legal license.
Last week, I went to see Burning Spear at the Paradiso, and sure enough, you cannot smoke inside the building.
Oh my God. No puffing at Burning Spear at the Paradiso. Next, it'll be like, we really don't want you dancing. Like, if you could just take your, just don't dance, please. No dancing, no puffing, no enjoying yourself. It's a reggae concert, actually. We're going to have to puff and we're going to have to dance. Burning Spear must be like close to 80 years old now. Am I correct? Winston Rodney?
He's fucking old and he's fucking great. I mean, he's
dude.
quite amazing.
That's awesome. That is so good to hear. I saw the videos that your wife put up, some of the video and some of the stuff, and he looked like he did like 30 years ago. He's just super active. He's just like, he's got that, I don't know what it is, but another guy, Jamaican, that has that is Kiddis I, who's also got to be approaching 80 now. In his 70s, I got to hang out with him quite a bit, and I've never seen like a stronger 70, like just inspirational in the sense of how strong he was and how, one night we were walking in Kingston and in the city, and there was this sort of, I don't know, like a 3 or a 4 foot ledge. And I was just like, I'm going to jump onto this ledge. And we're just walking, me and Kiddis and some other people. And I jump up onto this ledge and I look behind me and Kiddis is jumping onto the ledge. Well, his foot slips off the ledge. He fucking falls so hard, smashes himself so bad. Like I was just like, oh my God, like he's going to be dead. Like we're going to be going to the hospital right now. He shook that shit off, came to the concert with us that we were walking to, hung out and danced and puffed all night and had like a little bump on his forehead from where he smacked his head when he fell. But otherwise, I was just like, Tony was actually there as well. And even Tony said, I would have been in the hospital for a month if because he was behind Kiddis watching him fall. And it was just it's truly a testament to the strength of the Jamaican people and how hard they work. There's something to be said for that and how active they stay as they get older because holy
Well,
shit.
even if he did get all mashed up, he could have just joined Israel Vibrations.
Oh, that's some lowbrow humor. But you're right. I will be honest. The first time I saw Israel Vibration, and I guess it was Scully and Wiss who both had polio, who have the canes. I believe Apple was the dude that did not have it. And they came out and were dancing on these canes. It was pretty inspirational to see. I really was blown away at that. Oh, Colin's just hitting me up like crazy. Oh, he says he's in the waiting room. That's weird. I don't see anyone in the waiting room. Huh. I think he's in the waiting room of a different room. So let's see if we can figure out sending him the link to this. Oh, goodness. Too much thinking. Too much thinking. Um, Someone else talk while I do some work.
Hey Wade, what's up?
Oh, probably the most exciting thing that's going on these days for me, Sam, is I came across a paper that was published in a journal called Biofactors. I talked about it a little bit last week. Specifically, a group of researchers took three different multiple myeloma cell lines and tested the efficacy of minor phytocannabinoids against those multiple myeloma cell lines. And the fascinating thing is, it turns out that CBG, as in George or golf, and CBN, as in Nancy, are both remarkably effective at suppressing the growth of multiple myeloma, at least these three multiple myeloma cell lines, and at the right dose seems to trigger cell death. And it's always been fascinating to me how is it I'm dealing with cancer given the amount of cannabis that I consume. And I realized that at least for one possibility is I don't usually consume much CBG or CBN in my cannabis. So it's likely that I'm missing out on that opportunity. And I've since secured a bunch of CBG oil, comes in at about 52% CBG, and I'm working on sourcing some CBN. Got a little bit of it delivered to me yesterday at the Emerald Cup. And per Mark Scialdone's suggestion last week, I'm working on finding some manufacturers who are willing to do a special batch of oil for me based on your recommendation, Mark, of heat, oxygen, and time. That's all I got for the moment, Sam. I'm pretty excited about that. I would love to feel like I can get on board with personal experience of handling and perhaps even controlling the cancer that is eating up my bones with the use of cannabis. I'm been a cannabis advocate and a patient advocate for hell going on 20 some years. And yeah, I would love to be able to talk about my own personal example in this realm. Anyway, that's the news from Nevada County, California. And much love and really a treat to see you, Colin. Welcome aboard.
Well, I wish
Yes,
all
me
the
too.
best for I wish all the best for you also.
Thank you, Sam. That means a lot from you. I care a lot. Cheers.
Hey, welcome,
Wade,
Colin.
thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Great to be here again with y'all. Lovely to see Mark and Wade. Awesome to see you. And David, awesome to see Cat and Hat again. And of course, Marcus. Wade, I've been dealing with a family member who has Parkinson's, and we're going through the gamut of cannabinoid therapy, and we have in the past, call it decade. We've been dealing with it around 13 years now, as a family, and I'm seeing a lot of success with CBN for pain management, which is actually very interesting to me. Um, Not so much with sleep, to be honest. See, what I found with CBN is it gets you to sleep, but doesn't help you stay asleep. So you need other constituents, and that was part of the work I did with terpene formulation to have other constituents help you stay asleep. So I don't know if that's another avenue. Maybe Mark can speak on the chemistry of that, but there's been I worked with a toxicologist to really better understand how our body's interacting with terpenes and the best way to approach it in terms of percentage points. So there's a lot more to be uncovered there, but that was one thing that I spent the last, call it 18 months just doing that type of work. So it's been really eye-opening to me. I don't know, Mark, if you've seen anything that's compelling on your end in terms of the chemistry of how these constituents are coming together and how they interact with one another or coexist together. But
Well, what I do know, I think since the last time we've talked about this on Hash Church anyway, is that there's now published work in peer-reviewed journals on a double-blind placebo for CBN and sleep. It was always sort of anecdotal and sort of suggested, and I think there was a study, a Japanese study from like, I don't want to say the 70s or the 80s, where they were looking at CBN analogs,
hmm,
and they looked in a sleep model, and that was always interpreted as these things were, had um, halogens like chlorine and fluorine and bromine and stuff like that decorating the rings of the molecules. So these weren't natural compounds at all. But they
sure.
just looked at like how it made these mice behave in a sleep study, but it wasn't a so-called sleep study. The study that just came out, I think it came out earlier this spring, and yeah, the data is pretty compelling. I mean, even at low dose. And, I guess there is an effect on CBN, like you said, of CBD and the other cannabinoids are in there. And I think if I remember the efficacy from the study correctly, it was, that were um, full spectrum oils were more effective than the isolates on their own. And they just attribute that to, yeah, there's just something else in the mix that's making this stuff work more effectively. We don't really understand what it is, um but yeah, it's good to know that, what was always sort of uh suspected anecdotally, that there's now published double-blind evidence to prove what we in the cannabis community knew a long time ago, which is that CBN is good for sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also, I think there's more to be uncovered in terms of the pain management aspect of that compound. I do feel like there's something there, based on not just my own, like I have two herniated discs, for instance. I have one in my neck, and then I have a tear in my thumb, right? When I take large amounts of it, my thumb feels normal. And I don't know if that's, and Mark, you can dispel, maybe that's placebo or maybe that's, but this is, thousands of times high dose of that
Yeah.
same molecule.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, there's an anti-inflammatory effect that's sort of peripheral.
yeah,
That it could just be that kind of like the way that, if you feel a headache coming on and you take some ibuprofen and all of a sudden it's like no more headache.
yeah.
Um, what what's super interesting here, Colin, is that there's a company called InMed, which is
Mhm.
actually taking CBN through, I think, phase 3 clinical trials. And I think I want to say it's for Alzheimer's, but I don't know. Maybe that's another study. And it might be a different molecule because they have a proprietary code, but I think it's CBN or a CBN derivative. And yeah, I mean, could these things actually be like the pharmaceuticals of the future? You know,
Sure.
inspired by the molecules in the plant. That's kind of cool. And being able to have access to it, like here's Wade, you know, I need CBN and I need CBG. That should just be a formula that they should already have available for you specifically for this treatment, dosed at the right level and the products that you like. This is a no-brainer. I mean, we already know that these molecules are active, and more importantly, they're safe, right? It's not like, you know, you're going to die from taking. Is a lot of these medications that they use to treat disease are themselves deadly, and that's what you end up dying from, is the toxic effect from all these other things. We know that cannabinoids aren't going to do that. So it's like there should actually be at the pharmacy right now the 3-to-1 tincture that Wade needs, or whatever. I'm just making 3-to-1 up. I don't know what the right ratio is, but you should be able to say, look, these are both non-THC cannabinoids. I'm not taking this to get high. I'm not going to get behind the wheel and crash my car. I'm taking this to stay alive. Okay. Why is that not available? Right? Why is that not readily available?
It's definitely stunted in the sense that you would have thought 10 years ago when we were having these conversations, further down the line, it seems like medical was used as a shield to protect a lot of recreational people. Because and in their defense, like you're living in a country where you are a pothead, you always want to have cannabis, you love to smoke weed, you love to smoke hash, you love to get high, you're going to, you know, want to protect yourself if some way of protection comes up, especially if you're in a prohibitive country that's like you could get years in prison or have like your life destroyed and all. You're like, well, or you could go get a license. Yeah, this doctor will get you a license. I think it's like $50 or $150. And suddenly everyone's got these licenses. It seemed innocent enough, although I will say it always left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth from a patient perspective. It's why with Hash Church, I always loved to showcase real patient perspectives. And you know, I always hear Sam's words as well, in the sense that it's all of value. You know, someone who wants to get high, someone who wants to use cannabis as a medicine, like everyone should be allowed to have that. Totally agreed. At the same time, I do believe that patients should probably take precedence and not line up behind recreational users. And so it is a little bit hard that, yeah, I mean, here in Canada, this is exactly what happened. Shoppers Drug Mart, all these big companies got on. They were like, we're going to get cannabis. We're going to dispense it because we are the people who dispense medicine in Canada. And medical was this big thing. People were paying huge for their licenses and facilities. And the minute recreational came in the door, I would say 80 to 90% of the companies just like dropped right out of the medical regulated scene and just popped right into recreational. And it was a lot. And to the point where even Shoppers Drug Mart, I mean, that's part of Loblaws, a $55 billion company. They are not doing cannabis in Canada anymore. They're just like, why would we try and sell? Because cannabis just, it doesn't fit in the way they want it to fit in. You know, it's like, well, we want to control it and sell it as a medicine. It's like, okay, but like eventually, like we were talking about last week, it's probably going to end up at gas stations. You know, maybe it'll be that Delta 8, maybe it'll be something different, but people are simple in their cannabis in the sense that they want to get high and they want it to be inexpensive and they want it to be convenient. And even my own mother, who was buying from Shoppers Drug Mart, at one point was just like, this isn't, they don't have the flavors, they don't have the options for me, and they run out of what I do need. And suddenly she ended up, you know, going to, you know, another sort of medical platform, and then I think eventually recreational. So it's a bit of a bummer for the med patients how the recreational just use them as a platform to get to where it is.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you're bringing up because, you know, here in the States, you know, medical was a ploy to get the recreational to then not have to pay your doctor that, you know, let's not blanket everyone. You know, pharmacology's come a long way in terms of understanding the plant and where things are at. But a lot of these people are just here for a cash grab, and that's another problem, right? So I think there's a dichotomy here that we have where we have us on legacy and enthusiasts enthusiasts slash, researchers slash, activists, I think, a lot of these things don't get brought into the world of, of called the corporate cannabis or regulations. And as regulations get instilled into these markets, there's not really there's not a group of experts talking to the constituents around them to say, hey guys, these are the good rules and regs that are going to allow this to work. It's very much they keep trying and trying and trying. I mean, New York is a great example of that. Ohio, there's so many examples of this. And medical, for some reason, is at the back end of recreational, but that's what got us here. So I think it's really interesting how I think about what Sam did when he went to Europe to try to figure out what his version of all this was. I often think about that and think about when you and Rob, started your projects over there in Amsterdam.
I actually moved over here because I knew I could not continue
Right.
in California and the United States. They just were not going to let it happen. It was too early.
Yeah. So I honestly, I think it's weird to say this to you as we're on this together, but I think about that a lot when I try to as we navigate here in the States and navigate even what's considered a mature, you know, I don't even want to call it a market. It's not even mature. It's very infant, and we really don't. No one's got it right. So we all have to come together to better understand what the right path is. And when we're talking about medical and recreation, it's often so heavily weighed towards recreational. And I go back to one thing, and I keep thinking about patient access. And I think that's the only real reason. Like you don't have to go to a doctor to pay him $100 to say, "Hey, can I go get an eighth herb?" Like that sounds off. That was kind of my comment earlier about pharmacology and pharmacology. Yes, it's very important. However, those individuals need to understand the plant and all the constituents around it and what truly matters. And then help push that forward, maybe ask better questions or problem solve in new ways. Because as I look around where we've been and where we're going, there's just a glaring open hole of confusion as to what is therapeutics. I think we're constantly talking about pop culture within medicinal cannabis, hand over fist, and it's almost to the point where that's what runs, every single state, So I think that's part of the problem is that we don't really have constituents that are fighting for medical. They just fall into this like generalized, world. So it's really interesting to me because I have this license in New York State and it's a rec license, but most of the individuals that I've historically serviced have been medical patients. So, it's really interesting to me how this has all kind of shifted. Now, Sam, do you think when you went to Europe that, the idea of medical was the only modality that was in front of you, or was there a glimpse of what could come in
I
terms
could
of
have worked
offering it to
on
everyone?
I could have worked on industrial hemp, but there's not as much joy in that. I did work a little with industrial hemp, but it was always medical cannabis that allowed you to explore the genetics, the inheritance, the cannabinoids, the terpenes, and that was my real interest in this. So yeah, in America, I just plain could not do it. Even when I got here, they approved me, but a lot of people in the Ministry of Health said cannabis is not a medicine, it is a drug of abuse. And I said, well, at least you have an open mind on the subject.
Holy shit, that's frightening that it's not like it was just some random sort of a little ignorant group that was like, well, we're afraid of this. And then you could sit down with them and be like, no, look, it's actually like a really good thing. And then they could be like, oh my God, look at that. It really is. But they're not, a lot of the people on the other side of this aren't like that. Here in Canada, Health Canada still does not acknowledge that cannabis has medical benefit. And they have like Health Canada, that's like our FDA. a legal medical platform that services Canadians. And yet they all have come out and quoted, not all, every single person that works there, but the higher ups have come out multiple times and quoted, we don't believe there's any medical value to cannabis. We beat them in court and we forced their hand. So anyone that's worried about civil disobedience, yes, you can end up in court, but it can be some of the best courts that you've ever ended up in, especially if the timing is right. And it was here in Canada for all of the people, and there's too many to name, but obviously John Conroy sort of leading the fight with so many wonderful people behind him that it was, I went to some of those court cases and it was unbelievable to see the unraveling of a system that had been in play for so long. And then to hear like, oh, it's going to dissent. It's like dissent. What's that? It's like, well, you know, it goes to the Queen, it goes to the royal family, and through this dissent process, it's like, wow, like I'm Canadian. I didn't even realize just how deeply intertwined the Commonwealth, you know, Canada is. I mean, obviously she's on our money, but it's beyond intertwined. They make decisions in London for if something's going to become legal as a medicine in Canada. Canada was just at the breaking point. There was no way anyone was going to put it back in the box. And now after so many years, I see, oh, they didn't need to put it in the box. They had this other plan where they would just be like, well, we'll just bring out recreational, and then we'll just, you know, make sure that they can have the worst packaging, you know, like this. These are two totally different products in the Canadian market. You know, this is the US version of this is this. And so it's like just a much nicer packaging, and you can't have any packaging here. You can't have anything that really makes you look too different. A lot of it is just so similar. And even myself as a head, I'll walk into one of these shops and I have a hard time. Like my brain doesn't want to connect that this Mylar bag is gummies and this Mylar bag is traditional hash and this Mylar bag is, you know, some bubble hash or whatever. It's just like, come on, man, we could do this so good if you let us. Wow.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that because there, you know, Connecticut was a market that kind of took that stance in the United States. There's a couple others that did that. Pennsylvania tried to, and then it kind of fell apart. New York took the stance, and then it just exploded. But it, you know, to your point, yeah, we can do a lot better. You know, there's not only from a preservation perspective for the actual material, because you know chemistry is happening until you use it. And you know, it's not just that, but also like these single-use CPGs. You know, we've fallen into the CPG world for a product that is just so heavily guarded. Like, you know, I talk to, you know, even people that can't open the child say just rip the package and it's just trash. You know, like it's literally, you know what I mean? So it's really, you know, it's an opportunity, I think, for designers and young engineer designers to come and make really interesting, you know, artwork and packaging that other people can grab onto and use at scale. You know, sustainability is a big driving force behind a lot of what I see around what we need, but there's really no perfect, you know, material because plastic it's so woven into the world, right? Like oil is it's just the backbone. So we got to get away from that. And then someone has to engineer a CPG, CR top that doesn't utilize plastic, you know, and I think that's our biggest, it's a material hurdle
Do
right
you know
now.
what my partners do, Colin? In
What?
DC here, my partners Ted and Andy, they're CPG manufacturers from China. So that's kind of what they do. They build machines and they're really good at it. They've been helping us do a bunch of different projects, and so they've got this machine, and it's the old tuna cans, but they
Oh,
have
nice.
a ceramic, but it's ceramic on the inside of the can, so it's not even really, it's not touching metal, but they have this crazy machine that seals these cans up, and they're all ceramic on the inside. It's pretty wild to witness this thing go. And just for me, I mean, I don't know how many of you ever saw weed in the tuna can. I thought it was pretty standard. There's always one group that was doing it in some market. But here in BC, they used to have the tuna cans, and the flour was called the tuna that went into it, and so it was like easy to ship, moved around real good, preserved it really nice. You could crack the top, and then obviously you would end up having like a plastic top after that if you wanted to make it reusable. But kind of a
Yeah.
cool concept. Probably could do a silicone top at this point in time, but yeah, not so easy to escape plastic these days. A lot of people are wearing it on their bodies, like all of those Lululemon pants and all of those yoga pants. That's all like forever chemicals leaching into your body through basically like synthetic woven materials.
Yeah. No, it's well said, man. Because I've been going through it myself. Like, I've been working on packaging, and there's just not a lot of great solutions. You have to either spend a lot of money on it or to be willing to get in line and just do whatever. Even these, like I have these jars here, which are the pop backs, right? There's some blueberry banana in here, and there's just, this is a plastic top with a metal piece here. Sure, it sucks the air out of it and it keeps it preserved, but you know, this at the heart of everything, this is glass with, I'd say, 70% of materials that are going to break down over a long set point. So I think it's an opportunity, I think, for everyone around us to think about that. Because every single time someone, like blasts through these jars like nothing, I have boxes full of empty jars. So, I think
Yeah.
the biggest problem we have is that. And then, Mark, I wanted to ask you this. I've been looking at aspergillus quite a lot, and I was starting to look at tobacco, not to change subjects here too much. And I was wondering, there's no evidence whatsoever in tobacco that those dried leaves have been tested for aspergillus. So, in your opinion, or anyone's opinion here, has anyone ever looked at this? Because I'm starting to look at it because I'm starting to ask questions. Why are we held to such a flame if things around us are not? And what are we doing to better understand it and the actual constituents that are harmful versus this blanketed statement that it's all harmful? And what are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like certain markets are being suppressed of great material based on unknowns that aren't defined in testing.
Yeah, I mean, so the question is what, like, is tobacco tested for aspergillus
Yeah.
and yeah, can it succumb? I think it can. There is uh fungicides that are used uh to treat um, fungus on tobacco, and it's yeah, again, super interesting to think about, what was required for that company to be able to register products to be able to be applied to tobacco, right? Because
Right.
supposedly you have to show, you know, low environmental impact at the use rates. You have to show, safety in all kinds of studies, including, again, just efficacy, safety studies on all the metabolites. But it's just really difficult, I guess, to think about doing that for cannabis because they'd have to show all that data um, on cannabis, which is Schedule One, right? And so, how do you? Yeah, so it's not a level playing field. And tobacco, in and of itself, so the nicotinamides and all those things are potent insecticides as they are. In fact, yeah, I mean, a homemade uh, little recipe to control flying insects on the farm was always just take a little bit of chewing tobacco, soak it in water, and then use that to spray down dumpsters and shit like that where you have flies in the summertime. But at the end of the day, Colin, it's like a whole different thing because as Marcus will tell you, there's 10 other things in cigarettes that'll kill you. It's like, how do you determine whether or not the the application of a fungicide or any kind of pesticide to the crop has some impact on human safety when the product itself is deadly? That's right. It's like I think I
I
sort
think
of
I think it's easy to know that radium-226 is very, very dangerous. I've been talking about it for 30 plus years in the production of
You would agree
tobacco.
with that.
And
But
just
but it goes
now,
down really smooth.
yeah, it goes down really smooth, all right, while it's mutating all your DNA. No, it's on Health Canada's website. They actually have radium-226. They have the breakdown of polonium-210 and lead-210, which are kind of two of the many thousands of different things that are created when you burn it. And they talk about that they are radioactive nucleotides and that they mutate DNA. And I just couldn't believe that they actually have that on a Health Canada website, because for the last 35 years, David Malmo Levine has written extensive articles on the use of radium-226 in the production of tobacco, and how very, very, very bad it is. You know, just if you had to get rid of one, that would be a good one.
Yeah, that would be a really good one. You know, the reason I bring it up, Marcus and Mark and everyone else, is it's really, I feel like there's a lot of you know, Terra Vera is a product out there that people have used. It's a bacteria that eats the Aspergillus apparently, and I don't know enough about it. I've never used the product, although we've spoken to 4 or 5 farmers that have sworn by this product and said that this is what works for them. I just am weary of
Fungus?
products. You know, I'm weary of the idea of this product works, Terra Vera, right?
It's a
Um,
fungus? What is it?
I think we should do some research before I blurt out what it is, because I don't exactly know what it's made of. But we've spoken to a bunch of growers that are in New York and other states that have been growing outdoors, and they swear by this product. They say that they're able to pass. They ask the labs to plate their material rather than just run based, you know, the 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 normal way that they run the samples. So um, I'm not sure, you know, I'm not. What I'm after is everyone's opinion on this product, and what do we, you know, how do we approach this and as we move forward? Because this is not
But
a
Colin, help
problem.
me understand for a second. So it's like a nutrient. It's not. Is it a soil or what? What exactly is it?
It's
Is
a
it a
spray.
seed?
Apparently, you spray on
Spray.
the
Okay.
plant,
Okay.
and it's like it's a foliar spray, and you spray it. You know, I think it's you put it a part of your IPM management, and you know, as a hash maker, I'm extremely weary of anyone that tells me that they're like, yeah, you know, we get in there and put this on our stuff. You know,
Spray
it's
and
gonna be great.
spray.
It's gonna come out fantastic. The resin's gonna be great, because usually the resin is not great and it's contaminated and nasty. So, you know, it's something I think for just the general conversation to kind of research and look into. But I do think it's an ongoing problem that is just everyone I speak to in Oregon is dealing with this. Everyone I speak to on the East Coast is dealing with this. And it's not going away. So I think we just need to problem solve and start talking to each other about what the solutions are, if there are any. Is it genetics? Do we need to start looking at certain pools? Is it this product that I'm mentioning? Or is it something else? How do we, or is
Well,
it testing? Do we need to go
I'll
back
tell
to
you,
the testing protocol?
Colin. Yeah, let's go
Yeah,
there for a second. So,
yeah,
like the way that they're testing now, which is for PCR, right? They're just
yeah.
basically finding the DNA, right? And that doesn't tell you that the fungus is alive and well. And I remember, I think this was maybe 2019 or maybe 2020, right before the pandemic. We
Mhm.
were looking at all of these failures for aspergillus. They were all hemp crops, and all of them were actually grown organically, and some of them on Amish farms in the New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland area.
Mhm.
And I could tell you the material itself looked proper, but we wondered again, or like, oh, look at these hits for aspergillus. What does actually this mean, you know? And it's like, yeah, it's after the fact. It doesn't actually mean that aspergillus is alive. It just meant at some point in time during that plant sample's life, aspergillus lived there. It's, I don't know, like how much is
Well,
too
that's what I'm
much.
getting at. That you know, that we need to better understand and define at what point is it harmful and is it harmful? Because yeah, I get on there's certain patients or certain consumers that have, you know, autoimmune disease, so they're at risk, right? But have we actually proven that they are at risk? And why are we taking whole lots of material and saying, yo, this isn't fit for human consumption based on this small window of information that we quite frankly don't understand, right? And like that's what I'm kind of asking is like, well, is there a better way? I think there has to be a better way, is what I'm getting at. I know that there's got to be some people together that can figure out the right rules and regs, and then on top of that, the right protocols and right IPM to manage the plants and the cultivation aspect, because all of it has to work together,
You
right? It's
you
not
you
just
got to
silos.
remember that aspergillus is found in the air, uh,
Right,
everywhere worldwide, and
totally.
so if you're growing outdoors, if they can't find a spore of aspergillus on your plants, it's probably because they haven't looked hard enough. They're airborne. They're everywhere.
Right.
So for me, it just begs the question, are we going too far on the parts per million? Are we, because like, all right, let's bring it real back outside the industry. We've all been growing before any of these data points, right? Any of this under what we understood, right? So I know I've smoked moldy cannabis in my time. I know all of us have, right? We seem to be okay. Sure, there's a threshold of whether or not it's, healthy or not. We understand you're not supposed to do that. But there is a small window and a possibility that at certain times you're ingesting it. So what if that's the narrative or the theme here, at what point, what is the parts per million? Because I think about this a lot because there's huge lots of material that you just can't work with because it's failed, you know? So, and then it has to go through this remediation process. And then I wonder if that radiation process, which then goes back into someone's body, how does that, you know what I'm saying? Like we're going through radiation and then we have dead material now sitting on organic material. So I'm just kind of drum up the thought process from Mark and others that,
Yeah.
we've gotten ourselves into sort of this weird dichotomy where we're like, well, let's kill it, but then okay, you can actually smoke it because it's dead now, and but we're ruining the material and the experience for the consumer, and then all of a sudden people think this is what cannabis is, right? So it's nuts, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to bring that up because it's something we're all dealing with right now today. And we know that's not what good herb is.
Well, we live in a microbial world, and actually, without microbes, I don't think the plant would exist as we know it today, right? Because
Right.
the plant doesn't fix nitrogen, right? But the microbes in the soil do, and it needs nitrogen for amino acids and proteins and those enzymes, all those synthases. Those are made of nitrogen and amino acids. But to go back to something you were saying earlier, I mean, it's like kind of like, have we gone too far? Well, just in terms of like analytical instrumentation, yeah, I mean, we have the ability to see down to the part per trillion level, which is amazing if you think about it. I mean, this is like space age kind of technology, but if you're applying that to cannabis or any agriculturally produced product, you're going to find all kinds of shit in there. Just because it's in there doesn't mean it's dangerous at the level that it's in there. And yeah, like we were looking, Richard Rose a couple of weeks ago made reference to something that was posted on LinkedIn about a Japanese um, referendum that they were trying to push forward, where they were going to legalize CBD, but it had to be able to be shown to be point. Let me get this right. O O O O 1, 2, 3, 4 1% or less THC. So a couple analytical chemists, we were like looking at this going, my God. So something that's point, okay, let me count. 1, 2, 3. 0.0002 would fail, or even 3 or 4 zeros, 0.00002 would fail. So it's like, how are you going to distinguish between something that's, just a hair over such a small, it's like in the noise of the data, it's ridiculous. You basically you can't do it. But, like in prohibition, I don't know if I don't know, Sam, what do you think, man? Like, even like when Meshulam did
Now, one in
his
ten
analytical
thousand.
data, like most like what he was doing is he was looking at the different compounds that were in the plant. He was able to look down at say 0.01%, but to be able to get down to 0.00001% is not only an analytical challenge, it's ridiculous to think that you'd be able to commercially like test at that level and be able to determine a winner from a loser.
Well, Dread is in the chat right now. He grew for DNA for years and is a really exceptional indoor grower. He's saying that in Illinois right now, the CFU limits are 1,000. And so to give you an idea, Michigan is 100,000 for the same test. So everything's failing in Illinois and then getting cooked, like irradiated or, whatever the process is. I guess there's a couple of different processes for cleaning out these fails. It's shocking. One
Yeah,
really low.
Red is a good grower. So that's also the interesting thing I think about the markets that we are in the States is that a lot of us move around from market to market and seeing the shift in the requirements that they ask of us. And like I learned in Mass that it was nearly impossible to do a certain style of growing that I wanted to do, just based on the rules and regs. And then you have to rejig what you once thought was the way, and you have to adapt. And it's really tough to deal with that because it's not.
Smoke Sense makes a good point in the chat, Colin. He's saying, how does the tobacco industry deal with aspergillus? Because that's where the MSOs are probably going to look for ways to mitigate aspergillus, unfortunately.
Yeah,
They just
today.
pay off the politicians.
Dude,
no,
that's
they
literally
they,
why
they, they apply a
brought that up.
fungicide. They apply this stuff called mancozeb and a few other there are a few products that are EPA registered that they can apply to control fungus. But I tell you what, I don't know if anyone has ever been to like a tobacco farm when they hang that tobacco in the barns, and they hang it in these barns that actually have wings that can fold out, so they could let air in there. My God, if you walk up to the edge of that barn, it is intoxicating. The air that's in there, oh my God! Like if you're a non-tobacco user, non-cigarette smoker, you could faint just from the effluent coming from a tobacco farm. It's toxic. So
Yeah, Ryan Ryan Crazier. Yeah, but mass weed is weird. I've actually yet to find jarable flower in the state that smokes with any flavor. It's really tough. Um, it's really insane because you would
I
think
really,
by
my
now.
friend Greg is working for Mass Provisions there. Aren't they growing good weed where Greg's at?
Sometimes I think scale is hard, even with the best people at scale, because once it leaves your hands, another department takes it, and that department you maybe talk to in the hallway, but you're not running that team, right? And then it goes to a trim team, and that trim team does a thing, and then it goes to a bin, and then it's like blow the wind. It's really hard. Listen, I think no matter where you are, and just talking personal experience, everyone has to synergistically be working together and really want that same goal to have that make it make sense. And it's as I've gotten in bigger and bigger and bigger scenarios, it just it falls the black after certain at certain scale, because it's hard to keep everybody, you know, chasing the same dragon, like everyone chasing that quality and like wanting that the best is, it's hard, man. You know, I wish I wish I could say that it was easier, but I do think that Greg's growing some phenomenal weed over there. I will give him props big time because he's one of the
Yeah, I
few.
mean that's Meg Sanders, who I know from 10 years ago, used to do the Mindful, which was the grow right across the street from the Denver police station. It was always great to see the Denver police station, this huge 3-story building with all these cop cars, and it just stunk like weed there, like there was no tomorrow. And their grower there was Philip Tierra Rojo, who I don't know where he is these days, but that's where Kind Bill and the Kind Bill crew was first making live resin. Yeah, about 10 years ago, if I remember correctly. No, yeah, that's
BK
right.
Brewer. Yeah, I think, BK Brewer is commenting on smash hits. He's saying he didn't have a great experience, but I think, like I've had good experience with his Chem 4. His Chem DS1 that he ran over there was really good. But I haven't really paid attention so much. But there's some great growers in the state, and I think again it's just hard to hit every batch every time. So I commend everyone when they can do that well. You know, it's a tough one. But there's some, I think there's some amazing growers on the East Coast that are coming back home from the West Coast, so it's good to see it. So
Yeah,
in time we'll see better and better. So
yeah, we got some good
Let's
ones
hope.
up here in Vermont.
I think it's coming. I think we're in a big shift right now. I think there's a big shift happening. I think it's gonna take a little time, but I think, I'm building a grow right now. I know others are building grows that are meant to crank out quality herb. I think it'll happen. It's just time right now, and we gotta be patient. And it's never been easier to grow your own herb. That's the other thing I say to everybody out here is it's literally never been easier. I mean, I used to be on the forums trying to trade clones just to get something worth growing. Now you could just go buy a pack of seeds, and within those 10 seeds or even 6 seeds, you'll find something amazing. So I think that's, bring it back to yourself. I think that's where I encourage everyone to go. And same with, grow it, wash it, learn about it. And I think that's the other narrative that, everyone's looking for someone to just like sell them good herb. Well, it's not that difficult to grow your own good herb if you just spend a little time, get some good lights like the LED, Grandmaster LED. Those guys make some of the best lights I've ever seen. Get one of those, get some HPS if you're a traditionalist, you know?
Dude, the Borg that I have
Yeah,
does the HPS spectrum,
there you go.
and it's an LED light. It's pretty wild. There's 500 spectrums in it. It's actually beyond too much. Many people need to get these lights because the data points are going to come from all the people who use it,
Totally.
you know? Because
PK Brewer, we
how
have a
can you
light.
understand?
Yeah,
Go
no, I
ahead.
think that's the most important thing to get across with LEDs right now is like most people are like, oh, LEDs aren't as good. Well, I don't know. I think it's really about you can't just expect you to change your lighting spectrum and then not change your nutrient and your regimens and things that go along with that and expect it all to be the same. You have to kind of take a look at, the lights, and then there's certain things that you might need to do differently, such as feeding, or temperatures might need to be different, or humidity might need to be different due to the spectrum. So that's one of the biggest learning curves that we went through when we were switching from HPS to LED and then doing ultimately running rooms that were both. One was HPS, one was LED, and just kind of pitting it against each other for data points and trying to learn what varietals responded best to what spectrums. That was a whole, I spent 3 years trying to figure that out. And that's one thing that I encourage everyone to do is don't just listen to what everyone says. Try it for yourself and see what works for you. Because you might be holding a varietal that, for whatever reason, might respond in a way that what everything in my stable doesn't. So I think it's really important to not be so rigid about what you're told. Go and try it. Break stuff and then try again. Um, but yeah, and I mean, New York, someone said in the chat, New York, there's a bunch of hemp growers. Yeah, they were a bunch of hemp growers, but I think you have to understand that New York, if we had just allowed it to kind of go with just the ROs, yeah, it probably would have had some structure there that would have, allowed things to be a bit smoother, but I honestly don't believe that anyone would even have an opportunity other than them. So those that are in the chat talking about that, just remind yourself that New York is filled with the biggest of the biggest capitalists. So you gotta understand that it's only gonna get more and more crazy. But keep in mind it's gonna shape up to be a great market.
I was looking for this picture that I think it was Muffin Mittens or Mitten Muffins. I can't remember his name. He was growing with the Borg, and he just used different spectrums, and it was the same cut in the same room with all being fed the same shit, and this is what they looked like. That's the same cut.
In different spectrum, right?
Yeah, in the same room.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly this is exactly what I was talking about.
Kind of blew my mind, man. Like you could play around and really get the plant to express itself. I mean, first of all, 500 spectrums. I'm not sure what Thomas was thinking. That is so absolutely insane. But it's nice to be able to play around and have that sort of flexibility in your own little tent or grow where you just I think it's a great idea from an R&D standpoint, even at the most basic, like in Canada, for instance, if you grow a cultivar that's under 20%, you'll have a hard time selling it. So if you had a cultivar that came out in like 17 or 18%, it's very likely that you could play around with the spectrum in an R&D room and bump that up to like that 20%. Now that's a very basic sort of story. But when you get into the actual volatile organic compounds and the flavor profiles and the different ratios of those flavor profiles, then it becomes like, incredibly interesting and a very unique rabbit hole to go down in the sense of like, yeah, I'm gonna play with these spectrums, and it's not like you're just gonna grow one spectrum, right? Like in the early part of your crop, you'll have a lot of blue to keep it from stretching. Now, if you have, say, a part of your crop that maybe it gets fucked up in some way, it gets affected. There's always, it's great to have an even canopy, but sometimes you don't have an even canopy, and you've got that little dip. And now you can bring in that 730 far red and just turn it on in that section and get those plants to stretch up a little bit and catch up to the rest of the canopy. You could use that HPS spectrum throughout the middle of the grow. There's just so many different endless things that you could do when you have even just 10 or 20 spectrums, let alone, 500 just makes it like an impossible road for one person to deal with. It's going to be like 100,000 people that figure out those data points.
Yeah, we saw I saw a lot of different cannabinoid spikes in terms of just the spread on testing, like high numbers of THCV, upwards to 6%. It was nuts. Like, the LEDs produced, we had a run that was like CBG was like 3.7% with THCV in the 6.8% range. And then when I made a vape card out of it, it was in the THCV popped at like 10.12, 112 or something like that. And it was just a stacked, like the extracts, the hash that I made was just stacked with all these miners that I'd never seen before. And that was actually from Rosetta Stone. And it made me think it was the Genius that held a lot of those miners. But I don't know if anybody on here has grown Genius, but Genius is one of those ones that has a lot of miners that are just not present in a lot of like contemporary cultivars. It's really interesting.
Yeah, our love of THC really washed a lot of those miners right off the board, didn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of been
Maybe our
nuts because
lack of understanding too.
yeah, and like the different the different experiences you have from all these varietals, like a lot of the stuff I've kept in my clone stable, like the Genius. Like I even when I pop new stuff, I don't see the same spread of cannabinoids at all. So I was telling you, Marcus, I was starting to pop some of those older varietals that I have, even stuff from Shanti. I have like the Mango Haze times Skunk One and a bunch of like Afghan One times Skunk One. And that's all of original Shanti stuff. And like when you used to pack them all in the little straw tubes and then like seal them, and put the little sticker on them. So I don't know, Sam, I don't know if you remember this, because you knew Shanti fairly well. Um, I don't know if you knew what stock he used, but some of that stuff is really viable. Like I'm popping like 15 seeds at a time, and all 15 are still popping. So it's pretty
I've
vigorous stuff.
gotten seeds that I had under refrigeration for more than 30 years, 96% germination.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. That's awesome. Yeah. So I'll keep you guys
I
updated.
had a Jamaican one. Actually, Johnny B grew it and he put it in a frame. It's an old bud now, but yeah, this is a Johnny B bud of the some Jamaican seed that I had brought back. It was like a lamb's bread. They were calling it lamb's bread, meaning it had those sativa flavors. Doesn't look sativa at all. It looks cushy the way John grew it here in Canada, but this was 25 years old, this seed. I collected it in 95. When I finally popped it, it was 25 years later. And it was the only one of 8. I had about a 7% germination ratio from the seeds I collected. But I didn't keep them in a fridge for at least like 10 years. So,
Yeah, if you want to keep them safe, you keep them at maybe plus 4 degrees centigrade. I mean, that's
mm,
cool, but it's not freezing.
yeah. No, that's the fridge. That's where it spent, 15 years of its life after kind of being at room temperature for almost 10.
Someone asked me
Still pop
yesterday,
though.
Sam, what do you think about refrigerators versus freezers? Someone asked me yesterday, do they put it
If,
in a fridge? Is there
if you're going to
condensation?
keep your seeds for really, really long times,
Yeah.
freezing them seems to last longer. If you're going to use them in your lifetime, you can keep them at plus 4 degrees centigrade in a dry. If the ultimate container is like a container which you flush to remove the oxygen, so it's in like argon gas or nitrogen or something like that. That getting rid of oxygen for long-term storage of seeds helps them a lot.
Huh. Interesting. Cool. So it
Makes
sounds
sense.
like, yeah. I wonder the the
Uh,
modern packs that are sealed have that little bit of air in there. Wonder if that's working against it, you know.
Dred was asking about your thoughts, Sam, in regards to the seeds that Todd McCormick has been selling, the skunks, etc.
He got the mothers and fathers he picked out from uh from me, and I have nothing to do with his business other than he seems to be doing a good job of it, and keeping skunk number one available to the masses that want it.
Nice. That's awesome. You
Cool.
got to keep skunk number one available to the masses that want it. I mean, there's a bunch that don't even that want it, so they should probably keep circulating the globe.
Is Greg McAllister the Northern Light McAllister?
Yes,
Greg?
he is.
Okay. Hi, Greg. Thanks for your contribution to the gene pool, my man. It's it's a beautiful plant. I know a lot of us have grown it. I'm actually starting to go through some of the old Northern Light seeds right now that I've gotten. There, a lot of them are reproductions, but I'm curious to see how they all turn out, how they look similar or different. Just started like cataloging. We're gonna populate probably like 13 different breeders that have their Northern Lights, and one
Todd,
is the reproduction.
Todd has Northern Lights directly, old seeds from Greg. So,
That's what we just got those from him like I think
okay.
a few months ago. That was
I
it.
think
And
he's
then
got maybe Murphy's uh, from up in Washington was like one of the first Afghanis on the West Coast.
got it. And then we have the Afghan one from Mel. That's a really interesting one. It's hard to
Yes,
walk.
it's
Very
got
weak.
much darker green leaves.
Yeah. That one I'm
Hmm.
curious to see the difference between that varietal and some of the other Afghans that are out there.
No,
Or how it
to
evolved
me,
if
it's
they're
quite similar to some other Afghans I've seen.
interesting. So interesting flavor profile in it. It's very, depending on how you run it, but it's got like a sweet, musky skunk to it. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
to me, it almost smells narcotic, but
Hmm.
whatever.
I like it. A lot of people like the hash from it. Makes great hash.
Go Going back to that Northern Lights, the first seeds I bought in Amsterdam were actually the Northern Lights #5, the Closet Queen. I brought those back and grew them in a little false wall grow room in our house in Winnipeg, Manitoba. The Northern Lights number 5. I'm pretty sure it was #5, Closet Queen.
Yeah, that was my first experience with Northern Lights with #5. Someone sent me a clone named Crippy, and it was clearly, there's northern. You could see when it grew. The leaves are huge, man. It was like Jurassic Park. It was like the biggest leaves I've ever seen in my life. And
Hmm,
yeah, it was really good herb. It was like they called it the Crippy.
the
But it was
Crippy.
clearly just Northern Lights, you know.
Good
Some
memories, man. I do miss the days of like rolling up to Amsterdam when it was the only game in town in the world for cannabis people to just kind of feel a little, whether it was partial ignorance, partial whatever, go into the Cannabis Cup right next to the PAX Party House, where the PAX Party House right next to the police station. So it's just all cop cars and cops coming and
They were
going the whole
actually in the
time.
same building, so they were closer than next door.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh my God, what a time! What
Yeah,
a time!
it's awesome though. I mean, so Sam, like, when you started going over to Amsterdam, was Ben Donkers like one of the first people you'd spoken to who was selling seeds, or who was one of
Well,
the
Ben
first
had
guys?
just started because when I came over, it was in '85, and there was one or two sort of amateur seed companies. Ben was not publicly selling seeds yet.
Got it. So who were the guys? Like when you rolled into town, like who was like someone that you're like, yo, that guy's
Well,
got herb.
there was the uh the boat down on the in front of the harbor there in Amsterdam, and what were they called? Lowland Seed Company,
Nice.
Mm.
but they didn't
What
have any
about
truly great varieties. And also there was a gay lady called Dr. Weed who used to sell seeds and here in
hmm,
Holland. This was, before they were being done by Bernard at Positronics or anybody else.
That's
that's what I was
awesome.
going to ask about Bernard and where he was at in that, but I guess he came a little later.
The end effect of it was none of the varieties they were growing were truly outstanding great cannabis. They uh they made THC a little bit, and yeah, it changed a lot once they got really good seeds, that performed really well. The only problem is here in Holland is we have a fairly early winter with cold and wet, so you gotta have a solution for that.
So is that where like early girl and early pearl and all those like early varietals kind of that concept of like, well, they need to finish sooner?
Uh, yes, there was also a bunch of Dutch varieties that were very early. So sometimes people would cross skunk or some other higher THC variety with early Dutch varieties to try to get something, that
Like
would,
some Friesland.
yeah, because
The Friesland.
there was that stuff, purple pars, a bunch of Dutch varieties actually, and but their THC levels, I would presume, were below 10%.
Got it. Interesting. So really, I mean, when you guys rolled into town, you brought the goods that kind of allowed everyone to outcross with better genetics.
Whatever. I never cared what people did with my seeds. I just wanted to give them a good product that they could
Yeah.
run with if they wanted to. And if they made hybrids, that's fine and dandy with me. And it, you know, it, it helped a lot of varieties worldwide in the early 80s and 90s. And then other varieties started coming up strong and heavy, and but Greg's a good friend of mine. Northern Lights, yeah, his was probably right up there with Skunk and maybe Original Haze, which a lot of people really like.
He's asking you if it was a crime what Neville did to Ed Rosenthal's seed collection. Greg is.
When Neville did what to Ed Rosenthal?
I'm not sure. Greg is saying, Sam, was it a crime what Neville did to Ed Rosenthal's seed collection?
I don't know what Ed Rosenthal's seed collection was.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Maybe he'll hear you say that and he'll be a little bit more specific on the question.
Yeah, is he talking about old Ed, or is he talking about Ed Rosenthal?
No, because he said Ed Rosenthal, so not old Ed.
Well,
Old
I
Ed.
never knew of Ed Rosenthal having a serious seed collection.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, neither did I, but perhaps we don't know something. Maybe he knows something. I always thought Ed was, I don't know. I always thought he was a writer that was an educator. But
All you need to do is ask Ed.
yeah, true. You can I like that pun, man. That was funny. Um, I actually have some seeds from Ed that he sent me. I got them last year from him. So he is making seeds, I guess. But
I remember years ago he had cultivars. I can't remember like J something or P41. They were all, named like that. That was quite a while ago, maybe 25 years or 20 years ago.
shout out to Rotten Skateboards, Lobster Farms. What's up, buddy?
Well, the Durban Poison that I used to grow starting in the mid 70s in California before I brought it over here, it actually originated at the Transky coffee shop in Amsterdam. Ed Rosenthal was there in maybe 1980 or 81 or something. He got the seeds from a package of weed, South African, Durban Poison, and brought them back and gave them to his writing partner at the time, Mel Franks. And Mel Franks shared them with me. And when I got them from Mel, every plant was intersex. So it took me 3 or 4 or 5 years to clean it up. And then it was my earliest drug variety sativa that I had up until the 80s or 90s. So South African, I did get indirectly from Ed, even though I got the seeds themselves from Mel.
Nice
So
to hear those stories right from your mouth, dude, because you would not believe how many reiterations there are of that story.
I was gonna ask about the Durban, like, so you're saying, if I'm just gonna recap this, so you worked the line to make sure it didn't harm, and you
Yes,
stabilized
because
it.
what had happened is Mel Frank had reproduced them, or I
Yeah,
think he gave some to a friend who reproduced them before I got them. And
sure.
he said he accidentally gave me the ones that were intersexed, and because he didn't know. And his friend wasn't very, literate on the subject, so he didn't understand either. But a few years of work,
Yeah.
I would have to grow large numbers out, select the ones that were the least intersexed, and then I did that a few years and used the progeny that had the lowest incidence, and I almost got rid of it completely.
Huh. It's
But
interesting you say that, 'cause I've actually only had, with true Durban lines, I've had such terrible luck with them. Like, I've had only when they're outcrossed a couple times have they been something I can go all the way through. But
yeah, well,
the ones that
I've
I
seen a
did
lot
see,
of Durbans that were different than the ones that Ed brought back.
I
The
bet.
ones that I'm talking about are extremely early, like you can harvest at the end of August
Interesting.
in
Wow.
California.
That's
So
cool.
they were very, very early, and they had a very strong anisey, licoricey type taste and smell.
But they really resinous? Because the ones that I grew were super resinous, but they were just really
Yeah,
finicky.
no, the ones they were fairly resinous, yes.
Yeah.
I never considered it super A quality, but
Mm.
it was very good and it was early as fuck. I mean, I could pull a skunk plant out of the ground. I mean, excuse me, a South African plant when it was done in California in my little greenhouse. Then I could stick a skunk plant in there. A month or two later, it would be done. And then I could stick a haze plant in. So I could use the same hole 3 times in a row with just natural sun photo period.
Nice. That's cool. Wow. Yeah, I've yeah, like I said, I've over the years had trouble with Durbans. Low potency is one of the main themes that I've gotten, but like they look incredible and the resin looks insane. But they're finicky and then they herm a lot. So we've always kind of stayed away from them.
Well, I don't know if it's the same or somebody else's because I've seen 3 or 4 different versions of Durban Poison, and none of them were as early as the stuff that I was. I mean, I could grow a crop of 20,000 plants outdoors in the Netherlands. It was really early.
That's pretty cool.
So this guy in chat is saying that it's purple Hindu that you're talking about, Sam, not Durban Poison. He says Durban Poison doesn't have that terpene that you mentioned. He also, I don't know, he
Well,
said a couple other little things.
he can think whatever he wants, but as you know, I know my terpenes pretty well. We had our own gas chromatography lab with FID, and we could identify a terpene in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just love to see people like not realize who you are, and like he's still going. He's like, land races won't be early.
Okay, well, I'm happy for his opinion on life, but my
I got
my
a
version
question.
of the facts aren't going to change.
What are you guys
Yeah,
smoking
well,
on
your
today?
versions on the facts are based on reality, and his are based on reading, and so there's a difference.
Well, there are a lot of landrace varieties, especially ecuadorial ones that are extremely late. Look at Hayes, which originated in Colombia. I mean, it's late as hell.
Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
true. It's true. So, Sam, the Super Sativa Club haze, you'd be the one to ask. Where do you believe that came from? Because I've been told so many different things and
They they
I don't know what
s-
to believe.
they were doing growing, and then they shifted into seed production.
Got it.
Must have been I don't know, in the mid '80s.
Okay. So basically used your stock and others and blended them.
They used any good stock they could find from
Right.
themselves, from any friends, or I was happy to sell them all my varieties because
Yeah.
they didn't reproduce them pure. What they did was they made hybrids with them. So I felt,
And
I
he
still
was
like them.
responsible for Friesland, right?
I think Friesland might have been even here before him, but you can clarify it with him.
Yeah.
He's still selling organic tab stuff. So
I
y-
noticed his sons restarted the seed company and it was to
yeah,
be
it's in
honest.
Amsterdam someplace. I've
Yeah.
never been there, but I don't go out very much, and yeah, I
You gotta
I
get
I
don't
get
go.
I
Sam.
get to see them. I get to see them every once in a while. I bump
Yeah,
into both
I've seen him
the
in
dad and
Spain.
the
Was the
son.
last time I saw them.
Yep, that's the last time I saw the dad, but the last time I saw the son was in Berlin at the Mary Jane conference, or Mary Jane, whatever they call it. Mary Jane. Pretty good. He's always got great hash to share. He's just a happy dude, and he's definitely like a quality guy. He's got the quality.
Seemed like a good group of people. I just was curious the lineage. I don't, you know, you just
No,
don't know.
they were the competition for Neville and his seed. W- yeah, his distribution. They've been around as long as him.
Got it. That's cool.
And did
That's
they both get their like some of their seeds from you?
yeah, that's what
Absolutely.
I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
No, of course
That's
they did.
funny. Let's both get seeds from Sam, and then we'll like become competition for one another.
Well, I started
Like
my
talking.
seed business a decade earlier than they did.
The
Wow,
JML. Yeah. Um, so
interesting.
yeah, I think the Durban sounds legit too. Smoke shine, smoke signs.
Since, since, like Sinsemilla, as he's ripping a dab.
What's everybody smoking on right
Oh,
now? What do you got in your jars? I want to hear it in the chat here. Come on.
oh,
Someone said they got some papaya. Press
popping a
Keef.
little GMO.
Yeah, their work isn't very good, my man, PK Brewer. But there's some good stuff out there. Big shout out to all the growers out there. It'd be a tough season out there out on the East Coast for those that are growing outdoor.
Really, eh?
It's a hurricane season right
Ooh,
now.
honey bananas. Love that shit. Yeah, there's like a rainstorm happening in Ontario, and like this is like a lake throughout the entire city.
Yeah,
Like,
it's just humid
whoa.
out, so anything, all that aspergillus that we're talking about, starting to set in.
Drew
Over to you.
Roberts says him and his son have been watching Hash Church together since it began. I'm grateful for this. He actually started it with a Jesus. I miss the Jesus.
We're grateful for you.
Yeah, exactly. We got 264 people watching live right now, which is a pretty good number. When Hash Church was at its peak, I think it was around like 1100. So I think last week we had maybe 225. It's nice to see there's this core group of people that kind of want to hear, specific things and conversations that we seem to just love to have. I know that it is the Emerald Cup right now. So that's where Mojave is right now. That's probably where quite a few people are in regards to that. Poor Thomas from Grandmaster LED had a pipe burst on his property that he's dealing with frantically right now. So we'll wish him quick and speedy pipe fix for that. That's oof, that can be stressful when the water's coming out at like, I don't know, 1,000 gallons an hour or something ridiculous. Got to get it. Got to get it fixed.
This blueberry banana has got these esters in it that just reminds me of just older. It's like a 50-50 of like of blueberry and Oregon kids like banana OG. It's really, really well done. Big shout out to Golden State Banana. He grew this. We washed it.
Oh yeah, Golden State Banana. Can I ask Sam what his advice would be to someone starting their first indoor grow? Holy shit, that's
To be honest, I'm the wrong person to ask because
that's what I was thinking.
I use the sun, or I use the sun through a greenhouse glass. But yeah, I wouldn't want to give advice because I'm not current with lights. I'm not current with a lot of things that are required for. And I never really liked indoor growing because I like putting my hands in the earth and my head under the sun.
Yeah,
That's
makes
great
sense.
advice.
Plus, you're very far down the road. It's like, sometimes if you want to ask kind of like a question like that, you'd be like, well, you don't need to ask an expert by any means. Just ask someone who's had a small grow or whatever, which I'm sure there's many people here in the chat room who can help that gentleman answer his question. How would he go about his first grow? I personally would say get a small tent, do some research on lights, figure out if you want HPS or LED. Feel free to reach out to me and I can have a discussion with you about lights, bcbubbleman@icloud.com, and just start slow and get some good genetics. That's kind of the hard part. Like I would say, like make sure that what you're going to spend your months on growing are like really good genetics, not just someone's version of like they said these were really good genetics. Make sure like the reviews are there, make sure the source is correct, and that you're not getting scammed on your seeds or your clones or however you're going to get your genetics. And then I would say as a first time grower, and if you're in the US in particular, definitely look at those tarantula predators from Grandmaster, because that UVC light, just as a preventative, for 5 minutes a day when the lights are all off and you're not in there and the tent's all closed up, that's a huge advantage to a beginner grower. When you're a beginner grower, if you can kind of just keep bugs and mildew at bay, that is going to give you a pretty large advantage. I know that. What's that?
Grant Waiter said, "Lol, grow big bud." You know what? That generally made me laugh because I'll be honest. I'll raise my hand here. I've grown big bud. Literally, when I was a teenager, I grew big bud, and dude, I grew fat colas the size of 2-liter bottles. Literally, it looked like big fat 2-liter bottle colas, man. So if that's your first experience growing weed, that'll light your world on fire, man. Because it certainly did to me.
It definitely gets you excited. I'll tell you that I remember in 99 or 2000, I took Gypsy Nirvana to the Sunshine Coast to my buddy's place who was growing the BC hash plant.
Nice.
And, the top buds on that plant are literally like bigger than a 2-liter pop bottle. The bottom buds, I have pictures of Gypsy leaning his head in, and the bottom buds of these plants are about the size of his head. It was like a 10 by 10 room that the guy pulled out like 3 pounds or something. Like it was absolutely insane weed. But that was also the cut, if you ever remembered, that you could get in trouble if you weren't supposed to have it and you started posting it online that you had it. So it was like it came from a very specific group of people. And if you were growing it and they didn't want you to be, then that could bring you the wrong attention.
Yeah, that was
it's impossible to stop the spread of cannabis because it works by the cannabis osmosis theory. Wherever it's needed, it goes.
Yeah, and it seems to be needed everywhere. Hey, listen, even the first time I went to Jamaica and I made bubble hash, I make this hash with this group, I'd be all stoked, and then after about 5 or 10 minutes, they'd be like, "You can't show anyone else." And I was like, "Oh, dude, I'm literally going to show everyone else." And there was a lot of people that asked me that, not to show anyone else in particular places, but Jamaica was like there was a high percentage of people. It's a more difficult time. There's less opportunity. People have it rough in certain places. And I was showing some people that really did have it rough. But I always said, you know what? No, don't worry about that. I'm going to show everyone. You just hone in on the best that you can find and grow and make the best that you can. And that's how you'll stand out with it. And to my word, I did keep showing people. And boy, I damn near did show everyone.
Marcus, in
There's
the
Yes.
in the mid '80s, people said to me, you know, just sell me your skunk number one, nobody else.
I think it's just the fear and scarcity vibe. We all fall victim to it sometimes. I'm certainly not judging people for having the fear and scarcity. It's a good vibe to change and convert or transfer into love and abundance if you can figure it out. But yeah, that's what I'll say about that. Don't grow it. Just me. I'm the only one. Just sell me the skunk number one.
only
Nope,
me.
gonna have to sell it to everyone. Sorry, everyone. And then we all have our stories. Like skunk number one. That was like the first weed I bought in a Dutch coffee shop on the Damrock. Like literally, like got off the out of the train station, walked up, turned left, bam, sitting down. 1995 for me, and we went and bought some skunk number one, and we were just loving it. Just this fruity explosion of flavor and smell, and it was just lovely. Really, really, really lovely, especially coming from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and kind of growing weed already, where it was like you could really get in trouble and end up in prison with like hardened criminals if you got caught, which was I mean, it goes to show about that cannabis osmosis and how it really almost infects the soul in the way that it's like we're a part of each other now, like willing to like just the risk at that time in my life. I would not have taken that risk for anything else. The risk of like getting in trouble and ending up in a prison, not a jail, a prison with like the most hardened criminals that you could possibly imagine. We'll get my old mentor Ron Hickey in here one of these days and get him to tell some stories of his experience at the Stony Mountain Penitentiary, because it is absolutely bonkers that they put someone who just loves flowers in a prison like that for 11 years. It's bonkers. And I know that there's worse stories. I know Rick DeLisi's father was away for, oh God, I think it was 37 years. We'll have to get them to come on Hash Church for sure, Rick and his father, to tell those stories. And I mean, I've
Yeah.
heard them from Rick, and I've seen Rick tell them and been in rooms when he's been interviewed, but I've never met his father. So, and I was definitely like one of the early adopters of the free DeLisi, promoting it as much as I could, giving it exposure the best that I could, because I just thought it was one of the most nightmarish stories. When he told me I haven't seen my dad without plexiglass like since I was 11 years old. I was like,
Yeah,
that is
if he
fucking
would have been
scary.
sentenced, if he would have been sentenced federally, he would have been released earlier. But because he was in the state of Florida, and his sentencing was controlled by the Florida judicial system, they were never going to let him go until I guess finally they did during COVID.
Yeah. I have a friend I grew up with that was let out in COVID. She ran an incredible, she was I would consider her I'll just say Gretch. She was a visionary. She would had the whole East Coast on lock. It was just incredible. She was a visionary. And Gretch taught me a lot. And she was a visionary for where we're at today in terms of logistics and how herb moved around and who grew it and how it was grown and respect behind the herb and how she aggregated it and allowed it to get to the people. It was really interesting. So I think those are the people that paved the way for where certainly I think we all sit today, in a lot of respect. It's how traditionally we all called our buddy to get a good bag of herb, or in some of us how we communicated with one another to trade cuttings or to grow herb to get it out to people. And I think that was also like the Underground Railroad, if you will, of our community. And I think we all protected one another in ways that allowed us to do what we're doing today. And she was definitely someone that I looked at as an inspiration. And I think the Delisi is also in that way, in that same light. He was a visionary. He had a vision for what he was doing in a different way. Much like David, you with your genetics and what you did in Amsterdam, very much visionary, and how that shaped what we're doing now.
Oh
I'm
my
very
God.
thankful for all of it. It really helps me because I get to have, something to look back to. And I know all of us here share that same common thread, like Mashalom for Mark Scialdone, Dr. Mark, you have certainly taken that work and created your own world in which you occupy and continue to push it, you know.
My longest goal has been that every person in every country should be able to grow for any purpose. If they want to sell it for profit, then it should be somehow regulated so the consumer is safe. But except for that, yeah, this is all slowly but surely crumbling in front of our eyes. Some places will take longer, but already they can't go back. It's too late. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah. And like in the chat, like Bear grows it. If you've been growing since 92, then you understand what I've been through in New York, and you understand what others like us have been through on the East Coast, especially in Vermont and other states. It was really tough. And it must be a trip just like it is for me, for you to walk around and see how open it is, especially in New York. It's nuts.
Latest thing that opened in Amsterdam is there's now a Snoop Dogg uh, coffee shop.
I saw that. I did see that.
The prices are at the higher end, but I mean, Jesus, if you want to smoke Snoop's weed, I guess you got to pay for it.
I guess so, man. Dude, I
Yeah.
heard the Olympics paid him 500 grand a day to just go and like comment on the Olympics and hang out and be seen. And like the dude is he's something else, man. He's definitely like
So
being himself
I'm
out there in the
glad to
world.
hear he hasn't sold out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's
Certainly not getting it from the
authentic.
streams. I'll tell you that.
Oh my God. Well, on a side note, he is releasing an album with Dr. Dre here very soon. I
That's
did
kind
hear
of cool
that just
though.
the other day.
They get to
Oh, see.
revisit. Big love, Bear grows it. Big love to you, man. I think the chat is needs a dad. That's what I think.
My wife likes listening to some of Snoop's songs. I've heard a few I like, so I have nothing against him. More power to him. I'm for anybody who can be successful at cannabis. Uh, I'm happy for them.
Yeah.
Well, he's definitely a spokesman for it in the sense that he's helping normalize the mainstream use of it.
Yeah. I think that's well said. I mean, let's face it, one ad of him saying I'm not smoke or whatever the ad was, I can't remember, but he was talking about how he's gonna quit smoking. And then it
All
was an ad
right.
for a solo stove,
Yeah, that was
a
crazy.
smokeless,
Yeah.
and the whole
Did
like
you see
world
the
was,
did you see the custom torch they had him built to carry the flame
Yeah,
at
shaped
the
like a
Olympics?
joint.
Look at that thing, man. It looks totally like a joint.
It's legit.
Yeah, that's not photoshopped at all, by the way.
That's real, 100% right there.
Oh, fuck.
So funny.
Just being silly. Saw that, had to laugh.
Dr. Mark, what are you
It's
smoking over
true.
there, buddy?
Uh, got this little cartridge here, but here I want to shout out my friend Adam at Mendocino Grasslands, a mutual friend. He dropped me off a little bit of this.
Ooh.
Nice. Yeah.
Big shout
A
out
little
to
bit of
Mendocino
that, a little bit of
Grasslands.
that.
Yeah, here's
Adam
these.
and Ian, the whole crew over there.
Yeah,
You know
they
what?
got it dialed in.
Dred's asking us to talk about our thoughts on HLVD epidemic, but I think we should do an episode on that, and I'll get like Ian from High Labs, who used to be over at Segra, and some other people. Maybe we can get Kevin McKernan in. I have been trying to get him in for like the last 2 weeks. I've been sending him messages, so hopefully he sees one of those, and we can get him in. And then anyone else that you guys in the chat or in the panel think that would be great for a conversation
What's the
on
question?
HLVD. Just what are our thoughts on the HLVD epidemic?
I mean, I've been doing work with Kevin.
I forget who did the paper, but recently a paper came out that showed that maybe it was the guy at University. I'm not sure, and it showed that it's transmitted by not only insects and tools and people, but it can be spread by pollen. It can be spread by seeds. So,
Yeah.
this is and one of the biggest warnings is if you're using any sort of aquaponics thing, it can spread in aquaponics totally easy if one of them's got it.
You can spread through water. We didn't realize that before. So I started with Kevin in late 2018 when I got a sample, and that's what started the whole. He built the whole assay off of that one sample.
Yeah.
So he collected more samples and then built more. So I think it would be great to have him on so you could go through the data. Like I actually have full spreadsheets with the data, but I think it would be better for him to break it down because there's certain things I don't understand about the data. But we learned a lot. I did a leaf hopper study where I put plants in one greenhouse that were closed off and sealed, and one that was open in a plant that was close to that greenhouse. And the leaf hoppers tested positive for hop latent viroid. So I think Kevin can go through a lot of I can go through my data points and explain it all, but pretty much every vector that you can think of that is transmittable by touch it is possible. And then furthermore, water is another carrier that we didn't at first believe was real. But tools, roots, soil, touch, gloves. You name it.
Everything.
It's nuts. It's a virus.
All of reality.
You're gonna die. You're gonna vaporize and HVLD, But no, it's not. You can't treat it like that. You can't look. It's not doomsday. It's just you have to be aware of your surroundings and just bake it into your SOPs now and just wash your hands. Use, bleach. ISO will not kill the virus. You have to bleach it. Test your plants and just continue to be a good steward and check all those boxes for yourself, and you shouldn't have any problems. But if you take in clones from other people, you should have a protocol that first goes out to sampling and get that tested for that, and then test for all 12 of the viroids that we know, the cucumber viroid. There's others besides hop latent viroid.
I have a list of 29 viruses that have been recorded in cannabis.
Wow. So I recommend just like quarantine everything and also get it tested with qPCR. And that's the best you're gonna do, and just constantly keep your stuff clean.
Well, Well, I think we should try and get a conversation going in the next couple of weeks. If you want to help me, Colin, organize
Yeah.
some names and stuff. I obviously Kevin's on there. Maybe Dr. Someone wrote in the chat, Dr. Joe Ramahi and Dr. Gupta at Medical Genomics as well. So could get a
Yeah,
whole crew of some interesting folks to discuss it. I'd like to learn more about kind of the cutting edge and what's going on right now.
I'll look for
mean,
that recent paper I'm thinking about, and I'll include the names and send them to you, Marcus.
Oh, thank you. That'd be great.
yeah, there's a few people that are really taking this on with some really great studies, and there's also some really great existing stuff that's out there that predates, all of this. So there's a lot to dig into. I think it'd be great. So I'll put together a list for you guys of names, and it'll be a great conversation because it's such a deep one. It's fascinating what we're learning. It's just at first we kind of thought this was like maybe not real. And then all of a sudden it just kind of snowballed into, okay, this is real, but what do we do to better understand how it's actually happening? Because no
I
one's
thought
even
russet
understanding.
mites were bad.
That's another topic I'd love to get on, actually, because to be honest, in my whole career of growing, I've never been able to eradicate russet mites. I know people have told me they have, but I've never seen it. I've never experienced it in my career. The best I've done is walk into a room with a flamethrower and take everything out and then shut it down. And we just there's no fighting it. They're absolutely
What you can do is you can control the economic damage they're causing enough that you can still harvest your crop without it being severely damaged.
sure.
But yeah, I've never been able to even completely eliminate two spotted spider mite from a large greenhouse. Once you get it, good luck. I mean, you can control it absolutely, with predators, but yeah, you don't get them all.
Yeah, I mean and we're really, to be honest, like extremely just on top of everything. So we experienced it 3 years ago and I'll never forget it because it was a burn. It was to the point where I'm like, we just have to take it all down. You can't do it. But I do think that we should I'd love to bring someone on to talk about IPM and just like it'd be a great conversation.
Yeah,
Is it
I have access to a young guy, and I can't remember what his name is, but Thomas brought him up to show him that UVC light. And he's kind of this, IPM genius in the cannabis world. Young kid. I met him. He was really nice.
Matt Gates.
What's that?
Matt Gates.
Oh yeah, it was Matt. You're right. So there you go. Perfect. So I'm sure we can get Matt on easy enough, and some other
I've
folks for
tried
that
like
conversation.
UVB,
So.
UVBA. None of that stuff had fully worked for me. I mean, I
Oh,
under
this is
canopy
UVC.
lights. Yeah, but it sounded like the Grandmaster LED setup was a little bit different than the setups that I had used, Marcus. Remember we had that call, we talked about it, where we had tried it and we had saw some success, but not to the point like what Grandmaster had had.
Yeah, it was
It's been
interesting
interesting.
to say the least.
Yeah.
I think we have homework though for next week if we can kind of put some lists together for a unique discussion. I'm definitely down to stay consistent and keep gathering on Sundays and invite more people in and have more conversations. I am going to cut it short now, being 11. We did 2 hours. So I want to thank everyone for coming. Wade, as always, a pleasure. Skunkman Sam, so happy to have you back, sir. Dr. Mark, it's always great to hear what you have to say and share. And Colin, thanks for coming in, dude. I hope to see you guys all next week, and we'll put together some more people. I just want to be compiling lists of great people for different discussions that we can just, kind of start scheduling a couple, 2, 3 weeks ahead of time and have something to look forward to. So as always, may the full melt bless your bowl sooner than later. And I want to thank everyone for coming out today. And thank you all in the chat. I guess there's 255 of you hanging out, and we really, really appreciate it. So Thank you so much. Have fun at the Emerald Cup, everybody. And shout out to Tim Blake for just continuing to crush that event all these years later. Peace out, everybody.